it's so interesting to me that you can have somebody who will come in here and can be dressed really strangely. Well, look at them like, what a weirdo. But if you put them onto a stage, we'll all be like, what incredible fashion they have. That's amazing that they look like that. They have the courage to be themselves on a stage. On a stage. On a stage, anyone has the courage to be themselves. It just takes courage to get up there in the first place. Yeah, you think about it, even if you go to a Halloween party, people dress up, in their costume, whatever. We don't think very much about that, but the things that you dress up as, say a lot, especially how it is that you dress them up. Like, for example, here, we got rid of it, but we used to have, like those spirit days, we used to have gender bender days. Now that's just like Monday. But it was, you would dress up as the opposite, and it was fantastic. Because you would, the way that people dressed up told you a lot about how they saw the opposite sex. So for example, you'd see dudes dressed up in really short skirts and lipstick and all that stuff. And pretty much they were dressed like prostitutes. It's called what it is. And you say, like, why on earth, why would you, because that's how they see. And then you see girls dress up with like, their wife beaters. Like, the wife beaters. What are they called? Yeah. Tank top, whatever. So they wear a tank top. And they would have they paint their faces up to look a little bit like they had a beard. They'd always come in and their eyes were always dead and they'd be like, it was like this stereotype of how they would see. Now, I wouldn't see either of those two things reflected on campus necessarily, but I would tell my students, pay attention, because it's telling you how one sex sees the other, particularly in the context that we're in, and particularly with the influences that we have. So, yeah, Danny, you had your hand up. Yeah, think about this. So it's actually pretty smart. Costumes are really uncomfortable. Anybody see Snow White? Well, it just came out recently. That looks about right. 1 out of every 30 people. Okay, that seems about right. The movie lost like $200 million or something like that. It was more, even world, it's massive. Anyway, the actress was talking about the costume that she wore. And to most of us, we look at that, we're just like, you put on a dress. What's the big deal? But even just that one dress, it was hours a day of having it put on correctly. Again, most of us would look at it and go, it's just a costume, it's just a dress, just put that on, someone does your hair or whatever. No, it's not that simple. Costumes are very uncomfortable. They're usually very elaborate. And they matter. They tell us something about how it is that we see the thing that we're dressing up as. First off, if I were to tell you to dress up as, I don't know. What's that? The Grinch. Many of us would be like, I wouldn't want to do that. But if you're somebody who particularly doesn't like Christmas, you might dress up as the Grinch. In other words, oftentimes it's an expression of something that's in us that we wish we could be, or we would like to be, or it would be funny for us to be. And yet, it's not something that we would normally do in real life. And so the costumes that he's talking about in these costume parties is kind of like that. But it's that first part that really strikes me. I was ashamed of myself when I realized life was a costume party. First off, he refers to it as a party, which is interesting, but also that everybody's wearing costumes. And a large part of our human interactions are taken up by us kind of reassuring each other that our masks of identity are on straight. And we're checking each other, making sure everything is as it's supposed to be. And we have this weird schizophrenia in us where we're saying at one time, be authentic. Be your real self. We hate inauthenticity. And yet, if a person is completely authentic, it frightens us. And it probably should. It probably should. Because the reason that we wear these costumes and the reason that we want to get along with people is because there's this almost biological, not almost, it is a biological drive within all of us to seek the comfort of groups. This is why we want to be with lots of people. We might say, well, yeah, I just like being around people. Yeah, but why? Because it's fun. Yeah, but why? What's the it to which we're referring? What's the base motivation for why we want to be in groups? And largely it's because of safety. Because if we take our evolutionary programming back thousands and thousands and thousands of years. If you were out wandering the wilderness by yourself, you were dead. If you were wandering around out in the world by yourself, you were dead. There were animals all over the place. If you didn't come across animals, you came across other humans. If you didn't come across other animals and other humans, there were plants. That's one of those things that keeps me very humble. It's the awareness that there are plants in nature that will kick my ass. And if you guys go hiking sometimes, you know that there are plants you're supposed to avoid. And even then, there are bugs, insects, there are all kinds of things in nature that will kill us. And so we seek the safety of groups. We always say there's safety in numbers. So the one person who separates themselves from that group is a person that should frighten us probably, because that's a person who's saying, I don't need the safety of a group. It's not just the rejection of, it's not just the rejection of being social. That's why kind of at this evolutionary level, the loner, the individual frightens us, because that's a person who comes along and says, I don't need your safety. I don't need your protection. I can do it on my own. And that's the thing that there's a part of us that admires that, likes that, and says, wow, that's awesome, a person can do that. And yet it also makes us a little bit nervous, because we recognize intuitively that the person is dangerous. Because if you're in a group of people, what do you have to lose? The group of people, the protection, the safety. And if a person has something to lose, then they're a little bit more predictable. We know what they're capable of, what they're not. But if you're a person who's entirely unpredictable, which would be the individual, there's nothing you can take away from the individual who has nothing, then you recognize that that person is free. They're free to be what they want. They're free to do what they want to do. They're free to express themselves however they want. That's why we love it when we see like musicians, rock stars, even pop stars. You see them on stage wearing these elaborate outfits. Imagine them walking down the street wearing those things most times. It's so interesting to me that you can have somebody who will come in here and can be dressed really strangely. We'll look at them like, what a weirdo. But if you put them onto a stage, we'll all be like, what incredible fashion they have. That's amazing that they look like that. They have the courage to be themselves on a stage. On a stage, anyone has the courage to be themselves. It just takes courage to get up there in the first place. And so if you're a person who doesn't need the adoration of the crowd, who doesn't need the support of a whole bunch of people, you become dangerous because there's nothing that they can take away from you. They can't take away your safety. You provide your own safety. And so there's a trade-off though. Do you get anything out of being in a group? Yes, you get safety, you get protection. But the problem is you have to compromise sometimes. You have to compromise your beliefs, you have to compromise your integrity, you have to compromise your ideas, your ideals, perhaps, because you're not going to be entirely free to express yourself, because the group doesn't want your views to go against the views of the group. Now, hopefully, you're able to be around people who can handle that dissent. And so, part of it, like anytime you join anything, for example, if you agree with the Democrats about everything, but you reject abortion, you think abortion should be illegal? No, you have to compromise that belief to be a Democrat. If you're a Republican and you believe everything the Republicans say, but you think that, but you're pro-choice, you've got to compromise some of that of yourself to belong to that Republican Party. Belonging to a group, by definition, it requires compromise of yourself. The individual doesn't need to compromise. There is no group to appeal to. It's only themselves. And so life is kind of like this party where we all show up wearing a costume, and we might say, oh, it's radically different because I have different shoes on, or a different hat on, or a different shirt on. But we all know that it is all the same costume. It's just different expressions. Maybe we're all dressed up as the same character, just from different seasons or something. But we still have to compromise to belong to that group. To be an individual, you don't need to. But then again, like I said, life is suffering. You get to choose what you're going to suffer for. If you're the individual, and you go into solitude and you don't compromise, you're by yourself, the downside, of course, is you're by yourself. And it is a good thing to be around people. It's a good thing to have human connections, to have relationships with people, to know people, and to be known. But that's that balance, man. That's that balance. How much of yourself are you willing to compromise? But that's also a nearly impossible question to answer, because you have to be like an absolute sea, or you have to be an absolute ocean of virtue to receive even just a little bit of a polluted stream without becoming impure yourself? At what point do you realize that you're entirely compromised to belong to a group? As an individual, at what point do you realize you're entirely self-absorbed and you can't ever belong to a group? Those hard choices of life. It's even harder when you don't make those choices. When you just wake up one day and you are one or the other. But, yeah, Kafka feels like he's ashamed of it. Why? I'll leave it to you. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Neat. Happy Monday.